Boosters are all the rage of discussion now. My amateur take is I see a lot of reporting really off the mark. Let's go back to microbiology 101. There's this thing called a titer, or the concentration of whatever the antibiotic is in the system to ward off, the various bugs and plague in bacteria. Do we care about the titer, the concentration in our systems of mRNA virology vaccines?
So we care about the antibodies that have been produced in response to the vaccination, whether that be the mRNA vaccine or the viral vector vaccines. There's two types. And the titer tells us how much antibody you have. Now, we do not know right now what is the critical amount of antibody needed for complete immunity to prevent you from getting asymptomatic infections, to prevent you from getting transmitting COVID to others. But we do know that those antibodies titers go down over time. And it is likely that the lower your antibody titer, the more likely you are to get sick with COVID.
I look at where we are right now. I guess we're on schedules for boosters. There seems to be some trepidation. What do you say to the people saying, wait, 1 shot, 2 shot, why do I need a booster?
So you absolutely will need a booster. The question has never been, will we need a booster, right? With viruses that mutate, like change over time, which we know boosters are necessary. Now, the question is, when do we need a booster? When you have a global supply chain shortage, should we be prioritizing boosters or unvaccinated individuals? Who should be getting boosters and what the dose of that booster is? Also, with the COVID vaccines, as I've already mentioned, there's numerous different types of vaccines. So does it make sense to get the third shot to be the same as your first and second shots? Or should we be giving you a different type of vaccine?
Dr. Hansoti, before we get to boosters, what % of the population has to get vaccinated before we start seeing a real reduction in transmission? And I say this as Israel records its highest ever caseload, even though it has a pretty high vaccination rate.
Sure. So the Israel issue there is, I think, due to lag time. So their vaccine rate went up as the number of cases were going up. And it takes time for you to build an antibody response. And all of those who are vaccinated know you have 1 shot, and you get some response, and you have a second shot, and you get a good response. And so I think there's a lag time issue with the Israel data. There is no magic number, but upwards of 80% is what we anticipate.
How close are we to accelerating and ramping up to that? And I say this as Europe celebrated that 70% rate overnight, basically saying we're getting there, and yet case counts are still concerning.
Again, it's due to the lag time. It's whether the measure is 1 shot versus 2 shots and 2 weeks after, which is when you get the immunity. We're getting there. Vaccines acceptance has gone up in the United States. There has been a bigger drive. In Baltimore, there's an initiative where they come to your house and vaccinate. We're trying to meet people where they're at. So I don't know. I worry about the large proportion of non-believers, conspiracy theorists who are absolutely adamant they cannot be vaccinated. And there is a fair number of that still in the United States.
Back to you, on September 1, is the Delta variant crested? I mean, what's the first and second derivative on this new spike in hospitalizations and such?
Again, so looking at the data, there's 2 ways you look at the data. The first is what is the predominant variant? Yes, Delta is the predominant variant with greater than 95%. However, cases still go up. So I wouldn't say it's case crested just yet. So it's too early to call because we are moving towards a peak and it's not quite reached yet.
I mean, I'm fascinated. And Amish Adal just spoke about this the other day. You've got events with 30,000 people with no masks on, and yet a certain number of people are absolutely hysterical that everybody has to have their mask on. John Farrow's confused. Lisa Bramowitz is confused. I'm confused.
It's about individual perception of risk. And the challenge has always been is in this country, we have struggled to have a universal policy that's accepted by all. Individuals absorb the information that they can. There's a plethora of information out there. And individual perceptions of risk and susceptibility to illness change. I would say right now the recommendation is absolutely have your mask on, especially if you're indoor. If you're an outdoor social event, have your mask on unless you're able to maintain social distancing of greater than 6 weeks. We just got to go back to basics and make this simple again.